Hi and welcome to this PAC CXP Group webinar on the status quo of IoT platforms in Europe 2017. I'm Sarah Wilson, Marketing Manager at PAC, and I'm the moderator of today's webinar. I'm joined by our presenter, Arnold Vogt, who is a Principal Consultant and IoT Analyst for PAC CXP. This session will be recorded and made available to all participants in the next couple of days. During the webinar, you can write your questions in the chat function, and Arnold will answer as many of these as possible at the end of the presentation. I'll pass you over to Arnold.
So excellent, Sarah, many thanks, and also welcome from my side. I would say let's jump directly into the subject, into IoT platforms in Europe. So I'm looking into this market now already for several years. And let me make some comments up front. So I think it's maybe easier to follow me over the coming time, so that you have an overall understanding what we are doing here. You see on this chart, we are presenting today preliminary results. So they are not final, but we are almost final. So we will publish the report, I think, end of next week. We should be final. So the results are really very final, but it's not completely final. So, but do not assume that there will be many changes in the you will see in the final results. Another comment: we are looking into IoT platforms in Europe. Does this make sense? Well, from our perspective, it really makes sense, because when you say that the ecosystem of an IoT platform, so the system integrators and the supporting developers are important, then the area where you look into is also important. So we see really different capabilities of IoT platforms from a regional perspective. So we see different ecosystems in Europe or also in the US from these IoT platforms. So from our perspective, this really makes sense. A third comment is really, does it make sense to compare all IoT platforms on an equal base? And I clearly have to say no. I really think it makes sense to split up the market, to segment the market. We see so many different IoT platforms in the market. So we want to do really an apple-to-apple comparison. And it's not possible when you put them all in one box and compare what they do, because sometimes they really do completely different things. So from our perspective, it's really important that you segment the market. So when we move on to the next chart, I will follow with the agenda on several questions. So really, how many IoT platforms do we see in the market overall? This is very interesting, and you will see this heavily depends really on the definition. What is an IoT platform? You can really discuss this. We have our perspective. We show you our perspective on the market here, so that you understand how we see the market and how we evaluated the market, because we have done a comparison of vendors in this field over the last weeks and months. So we want to be very clear which IoT platforms we see in the market and which we excluded from this analysis. And on the next step, we want to take a user perspective. So what are the main challenges, and what are also the options for the users when they think of selecting an IoT platform? So this is very important for us. We don't want to take a technology perspective on IoT platforms. We always want to come from a user perspective, and use cases are from our perspective here very important. And then we'll look into the approach so that you understand better in detail how we segmented the market. This is important for you. Then finally, we will look into the provider's landscape in different segments of the IoT platform market. And finally, we want to give you an outlook. What are the next steps? Because this is only a starting point for us. So we are starting here with a focus on IoT platforms, and we will extend this also to system integrators in the IoT space. So it's important that you understand what we plan to do here in the next step. So let's start with the first question. So how many IoT platforms do we see in the market? What is going on in the market? This is the first question we want to look into. Do we already see consolidation in the market? Well, not really today, but what we see is really that the big guys, the big players are entering the market. Often via acquisitions, but this is not new, as you can see here on the chart. And this is really going on for several years, and we see it with SAP. They acquired Plate One in 2016, and it's going on in 2017 with the Software AG. They acquired Cumulocity in Germany. So this is really going on and on. It's not really on consolidation now, but we see that the big guys are coming on stage. They're acquiring the smaller players. So we do not see the consolidation today, but the consolidation will come for sure. So you see here the list of providers we evaluated in our comparison. What's interesting to see here, these are overall 30 players, but we reviewed initially 60 so-called IoT platforms, but we only included 50% of them in this benchmark. Maybe the question come up, or for sure, why we excluded so many. And we have to show you why we excluded many so-called IoT platforms. And as I mentioned earlier, this is really heavily depending how you define what is an IoT platform. And it's difficult to define. There is no clear definition. So everybody have a different understanding what an IoT platform should have, what kind of capabilities. So this really depends how many players you see. So for sure you miss some players you see in the market as IoT platforms, and I will explain on the next pages why we excluded several of them. So this is an overall chart regarding our definition, how we define what is an IoT platform. And as mentioned, it's difficult because an IoT platform is a collection of functions, right? And you can always see it from a different perspective. So you can say, okay, it's enough for me when a player is focused on connectivity management. So from my perspective, this can be an IoT platform. You can also argue each analytics cloud which can process machine data is an IoT platform. You can argue in that way that this is also an IoT platform. However, when this is your perspective on IoT platforms, you're really lost in space because you find so many IoT platforms out there, and you cannot really do a comparison of IoT platforms. From our perspective, it really makes sense to bundle together a set of functionalities, of capabilities, what an IoT platform should have. And from our perspective, it's clear we need device management and some kind of application and data management. So we excluded all platforms which really focus only on device management, for example, only on connectivity management, and we excluded all kind of application management platforms which focus only on analytics, because this really makes sense for us because we are talking about IoT, right? So Internet of Things. So you should have capabilities regarding device management, and you should have capabilities of IoT data management. This really makes sense. So I compare this really to a car. So when you have an engine, the engine is not a car. You need much more components that you really can put together a car. And I see it pretty similar here with IoT platforms. You need a special set of capabilities, of functions that you can really say, okay, this is an IoT platform, and very basic spoken, this is device management, and this is some kind of data and application management. And by the way, we really see different IoT platforms. So you see it later. So we see really different use cases here and different IoT platforms because they focus on different areas, on different segments of this picture. One important point when we look into business models of IoT platforms. Basically, you can split this up in two areas. On the right side, you have system integrators with their own IoT platform. And this is a good positioning because you can capture the whole value of the client, right? So you can do the system integration and you can also deliver the IoT platform to the client. So for the system integrator, this is a good positioning. They can capture the whole value. This really makes sense. However, on the other side, we see also, we call it independent IoT platforms. So independent IoT platforms, they have another big advantage, and I think this is really important also for client, because these IoT platforms are independent and they are open to all kind of system integrators, to all kind of developers. And I think this scales much better, right? Because when you are a player on the right side, you're a system integrator with an open IoT platform, and your IoT platform is pretty good, pretty well. So you're really limited through your capabilities as a system integrator. You're the only one who can really deliver the total solution. And on the left side, the business model scales much faster, which means so I have a strong IoT platform and it's independent, it's open. All kind of system integrators and developers can use it. And I really believe that the left business model is much stronger for IoT platforms than the right one. So we really split the market up in these two segments. So we see independent IoT platforms, and we focused in the current comparison we have done of vendors regarding IoT platforms only on this orange box. And we will do another benchmark end of the year, which focuses more on totally integrated solutions for individual industries and customers. So really the approach of a system integrator. And then we will not focus so strongly on the IoT platform itself. So we really will focus on the system integrator and how strong they can deliver a totally integrated solution. So this is the reason why we split up the market in these two areas. And when we move on to the next chart, we included here some more reasons why we excluded some IoT platforms. So it's really important for me that you understand what we here compare. We really try to do an apple-to-apple comparison. The first line mentions the point regarding the system integrators. And by the way, we talked to many system integrators and they agreed. So they agreed really to this split of the market. So this really makes sense wherever we see complex IT solutions, and IoT platforms and total IoT solutions are for sure often very complex. So we see this split in the market, and from our perspective, this perfectly makes sense. I already mentioned that we also included other players which are, from our perspective, only focusing on IoT application or data management without any capabilities regarding device management. So we see Salesforce in this space. We also excluded players which are really focused on B2C, on smart home, like Apple we see today. So we excluded these players also. And I already mentioned also we excluded players which are focusing also only on device management or connectivity management, like Jasper. And as we have to focus on Europe, we also excluded some more players which are not really present currently in the European market. So I hope it's clear for you how we segment this market and why we excluded many so-called IoT platforms, because from our perspective, these are not all really IoT platforms. So let's take a user perspective. So what are the main challenges and what are the options for clients out there? Because when they want to select an IoT platform, it's really complicated for them. So the main challenge is really when I talk to clients or to users, they say often, okay, we want to have one IoT platform. One IoT platform for all our IoT use cases today and in the future. So this is a perfect world, right? When you really can integrate directly from the beginning everything within one IoT platform. We see from a standpoint two different groups of clients. So one group is really, they are just starting with IoT. So they have some IoT use cases in mind, and they want to start really with one IoT platform directly from the beginning. This is one group. We see also another group which is more advanced in using IoT. So they have already implemented several IoT solutions. They have several IoT use cases already implemented in their company. And they think in the next step, okay, can we consolidate all these use cases which are running initially on different IoT platforms? Can we integrate them on one IoT platform? It makes sense to be more cost efficient, but it also makes sense that you have all data in one place and you can analyze all data holistically maybe also. So these are the two groups we see here. We see more challenges for clients. For example, finding one partner really for a long-term relationship is also really challenging because, you know, IoT is not a short-term play, so this is really a long-term play, and you need really a partner where you can trust in the product roadmap. Financial stability is also important, that the provider is not disappearing. The ecosystem is also very important. So you're really looking for a partner and try to establish a long-term relationship. So this is really important for many clients. For sure, it's also important that everything is very easy to use. So it's totally integrated platform, but sometimes this is a contradiction to the next point, that you want to avoid any vendor lock-in. But this goes back to me to the chart with the business models also, right? Because when you remember the business model where you have one system integrator with an own IoT platform, this is a stronger vendor lock-in, right? And when you remember the left business model where you have independent system integrators and an independent IoT platform, you're more flexible to move to another system integrator or to change the IoT platform. So I think also from the user perspective, this really strongly makes sense that we have this split in the market. Overall, but we have also to say that all IoT platforms we see out in the market today, they really have sweet spots, but they have also limitations, clear limitations. Nobody can today deliver really everything. This is not possible. The market is in a too early stage, so you really have to accept this. There is no perfect solution for you out there, and we have to deal with the situation as it is right now. So what are the options for clients? Well, from our perspective, they have two options. The first option is really, okay, you can make some trade-offs and really try to identify one IoT platform which fits really best possible to all kind of IoT use cases you see in your company. You can try it. Good luck. I'm not sure that this is really possible, that you find really one good IoT platform today in the market. Another approach is that you group together your use cases and you really try to start with different IoT platforms for each group of use cases, and with a clear perspective that you want to consolidate this later on in the future. So wait and see is for sure no option. We live on in a world where you have to be very fast with innovation, so this is really no option. And when we come to the recommendations, I clearly have to say you should not wait. This is not an option. You really should start with different IoT platforms for your different use cases and start with the consolidation in the near future when the market evolution is going on. But today, I think it really makes sense to use different IoT platforms for different use cases. And this is coming to the point regarding our comparisons. So we have done a benchmark, a use case specific benchmark. I hope this is helpful for you. We call it PAC Innovation Radar. And I want to tell you now some more things regarding our our comparison we have done here, and I hope this is a good starting point for you to select the right IoT platform for your use cases. So let's have a look into the approach, how we segmented the market of IoT platforms. So, and as I mentioned, we really want to come from a user perspective, not from a technology perspective. And when we take a user perspective, use cases are the perfect way, right? So we split it, we segmented the market in 4 areas, and we see 4 segments currently. So let's start here with the first use case. So when you look from a service provider perspective, so for example, you are a facility manager and you have to manage many different IoT devices, even also retrofitted IoT devices which are running around in a building, right? And you want to integrate all the collected IoT data in an existing application, so you have everything in one dashboard. This is one use case we really see, and it's not only facility management. We see this in many areas where service providers have to deal with many different IoT devices. It's the same in a factory, right? And you have not only one kind of IoT devices there, you have many different. And when you are a device manager for many different IoT devices, you need a special set of capabilities. So for sure, it's very important that you have device management capabilities. Security and connectivity are also very important. It's important that you also have a broad set of device connectors so that you can fit many different IoT devices. It's also important that you can do data visualization and also event processing. And very important also is capabilities regarding application integration. So you can integrate the IoT data in existing applications like SAP or whatever. So this is one use case we see dedicated really for service providers. And the second use case we see is focusing more on non-IoT users. So non-IoT users really means people outside an IoT department, and they only have to focus, okay, I want to connect IoT devices quickly and easily to an IoT platform, to simple data processing, to drag and drop dashboarding, event processing, really simple analytics, simple device management, so really quick and easy. So this is an additional use case we see for IoT platforms, and we see some players who are really focusing on this kind of use case. And the third use case is taking the perspective of system integrators and application developers. And they have often the approach to focus more on complex IoT analytics applications. So regarding, for example, predictive maintenance, this is one of the use cases we see here in this case. And this is really often very dedicated to one industry, or very dedicated especially to one client. So this is another use case, and for sure analytics capabilities are important in this space. Application development, very important. Also application integration is very important in this space. And then we see a new field, so the last use case regarding product manufacturers with really a focus on developing IoT devices with embedded hardware and embedded software. So really compact IoT devices. And this is an emerging field from our perspective. So it's not that advanced today, but we see more and more providers of IoT platforms that they have also an own IoT operating system, right? So what is an IoT operating system? Often it's referred to an embedded operating system or a real-time operating system. So these are really special operating systems for special lightweight devices. So with a low power consumption, with less memory, which are very reliable, so you can use them really in long term. So this is a special set of IoT devices which will emerge from our perspective now more and more in the market through the rise of LPWAN and Sigfox and narrowband IoT. So all these connectivity capabilities will really push this use case from our perspective. And this is really a perfect use case for product manufacturers. So you can really develop embedded software for an IoT device. You can directly link it to an IoT platform, and you can really manage the whole life cycle. So think what is possible. So for example, you can really can really manage the whole life cycle of an IoT device. You can manage the device through the logistics, right? So through the traveling to the client, and you can also manage it or control it through the time when the client is using it. So you can also identify correlations between these two stages, the logistics and the usage. Is there correlations when things are breaking and so on? So I think this is really makes sense for all kind of embedded technology, and this is, as I mentioned, an emerging field. So these are the 4 use cases we see today in the market, and you have here on this chart also a graphical overview how we where we see the focus areas. And when you come from a left and go to the right, you see that it's really going from the bottom more and more to the top. But what is always important from our perspective is that you have capabilities with your IoT platform in application data management and also in device management. So this is really important from our perspective, and that's the reason why we excluded other IoT platforms with very limited capabilities only in one space. Okay, so then let's move on and let's have a look at the evaluation criteria we used for this IoT platform innovation radar. So the evaluation criteria, we do not focus only on feature and function. So feature and function is important that you have the capabilities to deliver a specific set of use cases, but this is not everything to make an IoT platform successful, right? So this is maybe more let's say an entry point, but to be really successful in the market, you really need focus, you need a strong ecosystem, and you really need also power in the market. Because I think we all agree we will not see many IoT platforms in the future. There will be a very small set of IoT platforms which will be really the winner in this game. So only a handful will be really very successful, and many other will lose for sure. So when you do a comparison only regarding feature and function, this doesn't make sense for me, because we really have to look into the market when clients are asking us who can I trust, who will be really a long-term player in this field. So it's really important to understand, okay, what is the strategy of a provider? Are they really willing to survive? So they are really investing heavily into this race, because we are pretty sure that we only will see a limited number of winners in this field. So when they put focus on it, we trust that they can survive, and with limited focus, I do not see a big chance that they can really win in this game. Go to market, I mentioned the ecosystem, so I think it's another point which is really very important, that you have the capabilities to build and maintain an ecosystem of system integrators, of developers. This is so important. Without this, I don't think you can be successful. And so this was one very important evaluation criteria for us, because it's really a key success factor from our perspective. And then also the market strength is important for us, and this goes back and is related to the first chart, where we see the not really the consolidation, but the big guys are buying the smaller IoT platforms. You really also need the power to win the race. So it really makes sense when you have the financial power, when you have the market coverage, and when you have an existing partner ecosystem. So this really helps you to be successful with your IoT platform in long term. So these are the evaluation criteria, but I call it more the success factors for IoT platforms in the long term. It's not only feature and function. This would be too short. So this is another very interesting chart from my perspective. I tried here to summarize all the players we evaluated per segment, right? So you have here the 4 segments, and you see all the names below, which players we placed in which segment. In principle, we see two kind of players. So we see on one side very focused players, like for example Bosch or PTC, and also GE more from our perspective. They really focus on one kind of use cases, on one kind of capabilities they have. They're really strong in what they're doing here. Then we see also another set of IoT platform providers, and I would say these are more generalists. So they are more broader players like Microsoft or SAP. So they are really active in several of these market segments. I included here also some more information regarding the cluster and the average mark. So the clusters are really the 2 dimensions we evaluated overall, the players regarding competence, capabilities, and regarding market strengths. And the average mark shows you how strong we evaluated these players in this segment overall. So yeah, for your information, a 1.0 would be the best mark you can achieve here. And I highlighted here some average marks in orange. And it's interesting to see because we really see differences from one market segment to another. For example, when we start at the top left side regarding analytics, we see a market strength of 1.7. So you see here almost only very big and very strong players in this market segment, which have a focus on this and which are really strong here. So this is already a market where we see only a very limited number of very big players. When you go on the left side at the bottom, we have here the IoT platforms regarding device management and data integration. You see a big list of players. And as you can see on the average mark regarding market strengths, they are much smaller in average, right? So we see many, even also smaller players. So this is really a difference to the top left side here. So we see many small players, and it's similar to the bottom right side regarding rapid application development. We see also some more players in this field, and the market strength is also not that strong overall. So we have here also several startups, smaller companies, which are still active in this market segment. And when we move on to the top right corner, we see here clearly regarding device development, we see here also strong players from a market strength perspective, but we also see regarding competence and capabilities the lowest average mark. So we see really clearly that this is an emerging field, and it only is starting this segment. But very interesting to have this comparison from one segment to another from my perspective. So maybe you think, okay, does this really make sense that we split the market in use cases or not in technology? For me, it perfectly makes sense, and I see a strong proof point here when I look into cooperations I see between IoT platforms. So we see really strong players in one segment, in one use case, like here, for example, Bosch, and they are heavily cooperating with players which are really strong in other segments, right? So they're working closely together with IBM and also with PTC and others. So we see really, yes, this makes sense, this perspective, and these players see the same picture, and they are pretty aware of where they are strong and where it makes sense for them to cooperate with other providers. I included here another example regarding GE Digital. So we see here a similar picture. I can include here several more examples where this really fits perfectly together, and it really makes sense when you're a focused player on one market segment. It really makes sense that you work together closely with an IoT platform, which is really strongly positioned in one of the other use cases. So finally, now let's have a look at the provider landscape as we see it today in the market. And let's start with the IoT platforms regarding device management and data integration. So you see on the top right side, so the best in class, we see are Bosch, Microsoft, and also SAP. So SAP, they have done, from our perspective, a bold move through Leonardo, through the acquisition of Blade One, because SAP, they're really strong with their own ecosystem of system integrators and developers, and they acquired with Blade One significant capabilities. So they strongly improved also on this space. But overall, when we look from a competence, from a capability perspective, we see currently Bosch as a market leader here in this space. And we see also many very small players here in the market. They are active, they are good, but they do often have not the capabilities regarding an own ecosystem, which is from our perspective really important to be successful in long term in this market. So let's move on to rapid application deployment. We see PTC, Microsoft, and also SAP here in a leading position. But again, when you look into the details, when you come from a competence, from a capabilities perspective, from our perspective, PTC is a leader in this market segment. But don't get me wrong. So best in class doesn't mean they can do everything, right? So they all have limitations in some areas. This is normal in the current market stage. They are best in class, but this doesn't mean they can do really everything. But PTC is, from our perspective here, currently really a very strong player, and we see, as you can see here on the chart, several other players also in the European market. So regarding analytics applications, and this is going back also to the point I mentioned earlier, we really see several very, very strong players from a market strength perspective, and you see it here also on the graph. From a competence perspective, we see GE Digital from Microsoft, IBM, and SAP. But this is really a snapshot, right? So what we can do with this kind of images, it's really a snapshot of the market, and things are really moving very, very fast. So it really makes sense for us to evaluate really ongoingly what is happening in this market. And the plan is really that we look each year into this market, that we see, okay, what is really changing, because things are really changing here very, very fast. And the last one is regarding device development. So we see Microsoft here currently as the only best-in-class leader, but be careful. So what we see also currently is that AWS and Siemens are catching up. Maybe you're surprised to see these players here in this quadrant. However, AWS is, from our perspective, strongly going into the direction of building an own IoT operating system. So with the announcement of Green Grass, this is directly going into this direction, and it really makes sense to include them already now into this market segment. And Siemens, maybe you're also surprised about Siemens here in this space, but Siemens acquired Mentor Graphics, right? And Mentor Graphics is the owner of a real-time operating system. So this gives Siemens strong capabilities regarding IoT operating systems, which they can combine with their own MindSphere IoT platform. So this really makes sense also to include Siemens already here in this market segment. So as mentioned, it's an early stage for this segment, but we want to show you that this is a segment where we really think this will take off because of LP-WAN, and this will be an emerging field for sure. And we will take another look next year what is happening here. Okay, so let me close with some final comments regarding what are our next steps in the field. So as I mentioned, we have to do this analysis on a regular basis. So the bottom left box in orange regarding independent IoT platforms, this is the current evaluation we have done. We will look into this market next year again. This really makes sense because things are moving fast. And in addition, we also look into all kinds of system integrators. We do not care if they focus on independent IoT platforms or they have an own IoT platform. So we are really looking into the capabilities which they have to deliver industry-specific solutions, to deliver user or client-specific solutions. So we will evaluate this market segment during the second half of 2017. So the plan is at the end of this year or beginning of next year that we can show you some more results also regarding this market segment. And then for sure we will also set up a webinar to show you the segments and how we see the market. So now, thanks for listening. I have now some more minutes so that we can take some more questions. And if you may have, so please insert here in the chat tool or questions you have, and I'm really happy to answer them. We have some more minutes, so we want to close the webinar at 5:45. So, but let's use the last minutes for some questions. What I see here is, do you see industry-specific IoT platforms? Industry-specific platforms, yes. In some areas we see industry-specific platforms. This really goes back to, okay, where it is important to connect a specific set of devices. So whenever you are in an industry where you have to connect a specific set of devices, we see some kind of industry-specific IoT platforms. However, I don't think that they will stay within this industry. Often we see also that this is only a starting point, right? So we see IoT platforms coming from, for example, from energy management, but suddenly they realize, okay, our capabilities are not only useful for energy management, so you can use it also in other industries. And this often makes sense. For example, when you think about the connection of healthcare devices, right? So this makes sense from a manufacturer perspective. So you are within a specific manufacturing industry that you connect to these devices, but it also makes sense when you are a service provider within healthcare that you can connect these kind of devices. So we think sometimes it's a starting point for industry-specific platforms, but often they move on also to other industries, which are really related to the kind of devices they are connecting. And what we also see sometimes currently is also that we see industry-specific platforms around specific analytics capabilities. So, for example, special algorithms for a special set of devices. But again, you should always think about, okay, can you use these kinds of algorithms maybe also in other industries? Another question is, what do you think, how many IoT platforms we will have in 5 years? Difficult question. I think we still will see several IoT platforms in 5 years. However, I think we will see only a handful, let's say around 5, which will be really successful, which have really broad capabilities and which are really active in many different areas. So a very small number will be very successful, and I think we see another set of, let's say, maybe 10 IoT platforms with very specific capabilities, focusing on specific devices or whatever. So this will be a second group of IoT platforms we will see, but for sure the number will certainly go down over the time, over the next 5 years, and we will see only a very small number of real winners in this game. So I think that's it for now. Okay, so let me say thank you for your time. I really appreciate this, and I'm really happy to answer all kind of questions also after this call. So let me know, come back to us. I'm happy to go on with the conversation with you on an individual basis if you have questions. I'm really happy to talk to you. So I say many thanks for today, and we close the call for now.